Hi, welcome to Gospel with Greg, and in this video I'm going to be talking about focus, or treasures is kind of another way to look at it. And this video is going to be kind of different. This is set up more as a devotional type message, so there's going to be a short passage that I'll read, and the rest of the video is going to kind of hinge on that. Those of you that are following me on Facebook, this might seem a little redundant. I actually did this message in church recently. I was invited to do the message one night, and this is essentially that message. So like I said, some of you all on Facebook might have seen that, but I really enjoyed doing that message, and I just thought it was so applicable to pretty much everyone in some way that I just really wanted to make it a Gospel with Greg video as well, so I could have it on YouTube. So this is mostly going to hinge on Matthew chapter 6 verses 20 and 21. So I will go ahead and read those. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. And verse 21 says, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." And so in these two verses, Jesus is speaking in his Sermon on the Mount, and I really want to draw attention to verse 21. So I'll reread that. "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." So that's something very important to remember. And I really want to talk about this because I read this passage one day, and something new hit me, which is that time and energy are like a currency. And there are so many things that this can apply to. Worrying about things you can't change, and being mad about foolish things can waste your time and energy, and putting your treasure where it shouldn't be is kind of a result of that. And ultimately you're robbing yourself of joy when you put your time and energy, your treasure, in the wrong place. And a good way to illustrate that is, when we waste our time like worrying about something when that's not going to help us in any way. It's kind of like wadding up a $20 bill and just throwing it in the trash. Of course, we wouldn't want to do that with our physical money, so we shouldn't do that with our treasure, with our time and our energy. And I am guilty of not embracing this myself. I'll admit, recently I have really struggled to remember this teaching and apply it to my life. And there are probably multiple things that you could extrapolate from this passage, but that's specifically, this specifically is what I'm going to talk about in this video. And this again is something I really need to work on, but times where I have applied this to my life, I have seen great results and had so much peace as a result of doing that. So an example I'll give of a time where I originally didn't follow this teaching, but ultimately God helped me do that, is something I've shared on the channel before. Is there was someone that I had a lot of unforgiveness towards for some different things that they did, and even after they died, I still had a lot of unforgiveness towards them, and I tried to justify it and say that I didn't mistreat them while they were alive, and they're dead now, and I would say, can you really have unforgiveness towards a dead person? Well, I held on to that, and the only people I ever told that to were my parents. It's not something I was necessarily proud of that I went around and flaunted, so only my parents knew. And I would occasionally pray that God would show me if there was anything in my life that needed fixed, that shouldn't be the way that it was, so that I could fix it. And there was one morning in church where I prayed that, and I wasn't even thinking about this specifically. I didn't necessarily think there would be a concrete thing that God would show me that I needed to fix in my life. But I knew that if there was something, God would reveal that. And this guest preacher that knew nothing about my situation, and I didn't know what he was going to preach on, got up and said he was going to preach on unforgiveness. And that immediately struck me. I mean, I instantly knew that he was talking to me and about that specifically, even though he in his human mind didn't know what I was dealing with. I believe that the Spirit really orchestrated that and was answering my prayer, because I wasn't putting my treasure in heaven. I was putting my treasure in earthly things and in unforgiveness. And because your treasure, where you put your treasure, that's where your heart will be. I was in a very dangerous place. I was putting my treasure in hate, so I was at risk for having a heart of hate. And so God stepped in that way, and I felt really convicted by that message. And I prayed after the service, telling God that I was done making excuses, but I didn't know how I was going to forgive them, and to tell me something that would help me forgive this person. And I remember when I prayed, a very soft voice said, "What if when you asked me to save you, I said no, you aren't good enough?" And I remember I just felt this rush through my body. And I tell you, whenever I tell this story, it's I start to feel a little emotional when I tell it. But when I got up from that prayer, I just felt it was gone supernaturally. And so God helped me shed that and helped me put my treasure in godly things and in heavenly things, like forgiveness and love. And that's improved my life greatly since then. This was several years ago. And in general, putting too much focus in the wrong place can cause us to not appreciate what God has already blessed us with. And one thing that's I've shared this too is when I was speaking at a group one time about a topic of similar to this that tied into appreciating what you have and how you can kind of be distracted by other things, and that can take away your joy. Where I did an exercise where I had people think about what they wanted to do in the future and write it down, and I acted like I was going to predict what they said, and I went out of the room and changed my shirt and glasses, and I'm like, all right, who said they wanted to travel and all that, and people would raise their hands. And the last question I asked was, who noticed I changed? And nobody did. Not one single person did. And I'd been around them for an hour by that time, so they had plenty of time to notice how I was dressed. And I think we can do that spiritually, where we can have blessings right in front of us we don't even see, because we're not storing treasures in heaven. We're storing treasures in earthly life, in earthly things. And it's important to remember to store your treasures in heaven specifically, like verse 20 says, and not just do whatever makes you happy, like a lot of people will say. No, we need to be heavenly minded specifically, because our world pushes messages that, being famous and being rich or attracting a romantic partner will make you happy and kind of fulfill you. And none of those things are inherently wrong, but none of it will bring you true joy in the end like Jesus will. And so it's very, very important to remember that, and that ties into having a good sense of priority as well. And so Scripture tells us over and over that God is supreme, and the life to come dwarfs this one. So we need to be heavenly minded about things and have our focus on heaven and what God would have us to do. And so I'll leave you with this question: where's your treasure and where's your heart? Because earthly treasures will fade away, but the things of God never will. So I hope you all enjoyed this kind of new format that I tried in this video. And until next time, God bless.